And let's get some reactions to that now. I'm joined by Greg Swenson, who's the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Greg, welcome to the show. Greg, astonishing evidence there. 3 key points that really leapt out of that evidence there, Greg Swenson. The first one was that the shooter put a drone in the air. Thomas Matthew Crooks put a drone in the air 2 hours before the shooting, a significant confirmation of the rumour that had been going around, Greg Swenson.
Yeah, Martin, it's just every day there's another revelation that the Secret Service, and in this case the FBI, is being somewhat dishonest. You had the first denial immediately out of the gates that they denied that the Trump campaign had asked for additional protection, and then 5 days later came clean and admitted that the Trump campaign had indeed requested and were denied. So, this is just another case of distrust with the FBI, with justice, with the Secret Service. And I think Jim mentioned that in his introduction. Many cases where the FBI has dug their own grave and really created this distrust. I think the most obvious was the 51 alleged intelligence officers claiming that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, when in fact they had the laptop and were quite aware that it was valid in 2019. So they had it for at least a year. And then secondly, they were involved in the Russia collusion hoax at the beginning or before the election in 2016 and continued to run with it. So this is not an institution that should be trusted right now. I'm putting my faith in the congressional investigation that's led bipartisan by Hakeem Jeffries, who's the minority leader, the Democrat minority leader, as well as Mike Johnson, who's the Speaker of the House. Okay,
Greg, but specifically putting back to today's revelations, the second big revelation there was confirmation. 2 explosive devices in the car of Thomas Matthew Crooks with receivers and a detonator, a detonation device on his person when he was shot dead by a sniper on that sloping roof. So the clear link here that he may have had the ability to set off 2 bombs as well.
Sure. I think you'll see more of that coming out in the next few days, next few weeks. So obviously there were missteps here. And the fact that he was spotted at 6:10, but nothing was done about it until he fired off 8 shots and was finally shot himself 2 minutes later. That's just way too long. If they had their sights on him, he should have been taken out. And the fact that that people were seeing him on the roof and nothing was done. So there's just a long list of missteps by the FBI, as well as more importantly the Secret Service.
And Greg, also he said there, Christopher Wray, the FBI director, no evidence of any accomplices. So seems to be at this stage a lone operator, a lone wolf. But what we haven't got into yet, Greg Swenson, was any of the questioning around the motives. Was this a politically motivated attack? Many people, of course, think it must be piece of domestic terrorism. Do you think, Greg Swenson, the FBI will reveal the information of what was on the shooter's phone? Those reports, he had photographs of Donald Trump and maybe a history of disliking Donald Trump. Do you think we're expected to hear that, or do you think they'll keep a lid on that evidence?
I think ultimately they'll have to. And I think when they're subpoenaed in front of Congress, they'll have to divulge that when they get it. I think these arguing about the encryption, maybe there's some validity to that. But again, there's so little trust in these institutions at this point because of the way they've behaved for the last 8 years that I'm looking forward to having the subpoenas from Congress. I think that will work ultimately. In the meantime, they've just really stumbled on themselves. The Secret Service, obviously with Kimberly Cheadle resigning yesterday, that's, maybe a good start, but they've made a lot of mistakes lately. They've denied additional protection for President Trump. They've rejected protection for people like Robert O'Brien, the former national security advisor, who's on the list by the Iranian mullahs, by the Ayatollah, and has death threats against him. And they pulled his Secret Service protection. So I think they've got a lot to answer for, Martin.
And Greg, the Democrat spokesperson there, the Senator North Carolina, was pulling in some mentions of, is it because there are so many guns on the streets that this was allowed to happen? It was a clearly politically motivated attack against Republicans, trying to pull in threats, online threats against Kamala Harris as a broader spectrum of political violence. He was kind of looping that all into the same Venn diagram as an attempted assassination. And of course, Greg Swenson, a lot of people watching in the UK will be quite surprised by the highly political nature of this questioning in America.
Right, Martin, it's a great point. Gerald Nadler, who was the congressman that was going on and on about all these right wing extremists and threats. It was President Trump who was shot. The assassination attempt was on President Trump, and of course he twists it into all the alleged right wing extremists and all these terrible things and terrible threats to Democrats. He slipped in Ron DeSantis in there just to be, somewhat polite, but it was a long list of grievances. And that's not really the point here. The point is the failings of the Secret Service. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. I mean, it's nice to see some bipartisan respect here, and you've seen that from other Democrats, but not from Gerald Nadler. He's just a political hack, and that was obvious today.
And Greg, another key point that one of the Republican senators made was, will the FBI release this evidence in a timely fashion, and will they do it voluntarily? And as you say, he then referred to the Hunter Biden laptop, the clear intimation the FBI had the evidence all along. They refused to release that evidence. They let the conspiracy theories, they let the media narrative take a hold. They had the evidence. They didn't release it. Greg Swenson, do you fear the same thing might happen here? And why would they withhold evidence if that's the case, when it's clearly a huge issue of national interest and political safety?
Yeah. Because, Martin, it's the cover-up. They've covered up President Biden's cognitive issues for 3 years now, maybe 4, and especially in the last few months. So it's always the cover-up, and I think you'll see that. Maybe the scrutiny is just so great right now that they won't be able to do that, but they've surely done it in the past, working with the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016 on the Russia collusion hoax. And again, with the 51 intelligence officers, covering up the Hunter Biden laptop. So it's always the cover up. I think you're seeing that already here. And you saw that, again, with the denial right out of the gates by Anthony Guglielmi, who is the spokesman. And then 2 days later, there's a job posting. This is public information on the government website, a job posting for a public affairs specialist for the Secret Service. And the salary on that is $130,000 a year. That's twice what an actual Secret Service agent gets, in his first year, his or her first year, it's somewhere in the low 60s. These are people risking their lives. So this is not about the rank and file. Those are brave people that, risk their lives. You saw the human shield around President Trump. This is the management. This is the senior level rot. And you saw that, again, back in 2016, right through President Trump's first term. And you're seeing it again with the public denials. You're seeing it again from hacks like Gerald Nadler, who are just obsessed with protecting their own brand.
OK, Greg Swenson, we'll have to leave it there. Just if you're joining us at the end of this hour, the evidence so far has revealed there was a drone 2 hours before the shooting from 200 yards away that the shooter put up Thomas Matthew Crooks. 2 explosive devices found about his person with a transmitter on him, receivers and the explosives in the car. We'll go back to the hearing into the assassination attempt on Donald Trump when it resumes.